On the morning of March 25, 1944, a Soviet T-34 crawled along a road north of the Dniester at the speed of a walking man. The driver's hatch was open because the exhaust fumes inside were worse than the cold outside. Ahead, the road had dissolved into 2 feet of brown clay. Behind, more tanks were cutting the same ruts deeper, and somewhere in the gray weather, infantry from the Soviet 40th Army was moving toward them. When those 2 columns met near Khotin, the last usable German corridor closed. Roughly 200,000 men of the German 1st Panzer Army were inside the ring. 12 days later, most of those men were still alive, but only 45 armored vehicles came out with them. That number changes the meaning of the entire battle. Kamenets-Podolsky was not a second Stalingrad. The Red Army did not kill or capture the bulk of the German army inside the pocket. Instead, it did something less dramatic to watch and nearly as decisive in war. It let the men escape while stripping away the machinery that made them a panzer army. The operation began weeks earlier on March 4, when the Soviet 1st Ukrainian Front attacked from the north. A day later, the 2nd Ukrainian Front opened its own offensive from the east and southeast. Their objective was larger than one German formation. They intended to break Army Group South, clear western Ukraine, reach the pre-war frontier, and tear open the route toward Romania and the Balkans. The pocket formed at Kamenets-Podolsky was not the original purpose of the offensive. It was the consequence of a much larger movement. At the center of that movement stood General Hans-Valentin Hube's 1st Panzer Army. German returns at the beginning of March listed more than 211,000 men under its command. It contained 18 divisions, including 4 Panzer divisions and an SS division. On paper, it was one of the strongest concentrations of German mobile power left on the Eastern Front, but paper strength was about to collide with Ukrainian soil. The spring thaw arrived early in 1944. Snowmelt and rain turned the black earth into the Rasputitsa, the seasonal sea of mud that could swallow a truck to its axles and stop a column without firing a shot. Main roads became trenches of liquid clay. Low ground became impassable. Bridge approaches collapsed into bogs faster than engineers could reinforce them. Every mile consumed fuel. Every recovery attempt demanded another vehicle. Every broken truck narrowed the road for the vehicles behind it. The mud punished both armies, but not in the same way. The T-34's wide track spread its weight and allowed it to keep moving through ground that stopped most wheeled transport. The German army, despite its armored image, depended heavily on trucks, half-tracks, horse-drawn transport, and vehicles with narrower tracks. Its supply bases were nearly 200 miles behind the front. Once the roads dissolved, that distance stopped being a number on a map. It became a wall. Fuel and ammunition could arrive by air, or they might not arrive at all. Meanwhile, Soviet tank armies kept pushing south on their own tracks. From the north came Mikhail Kutuzov's 1st Tank Army and Vasily Bogdanov's 4th Tank Army. From the east and southeast came formations of Ivan Konev's 2nd Ukrainian Front. The Soviet 40th Army drove north toward the same corridor. Their movements were meant to meet near Khotin and cut the German line of communication behind Hube. The map suggested a clean double envelopment. The ground made it anything but clean. The Soviet armored formations that reached the German rear were already worn down by hundreds of miles of winter and spring operations. By mid-March, Pavel Rybalko's 3rd Guards Tank Army had only a fraction of its authorized tanks still running. Some subordinate formations could count their serviceable vehicles on one hand. Workshops lagged far behind. Recovery tractors were stuck in the same mud as the tanks they were supposed to retrieve. Replacement crews and spare parts could not catch the spearheads. So when the Soviet pincers closed, they did not form a deep wall of fresh armies. They formed a thin ring made by exhausted formations that were still being ordered west and south toward larger strategic objectives. That thinness would save German lives. It would not save German equipment. On March 25, the corridor near Khotin was cut. Some accounts use March 30 as the date of completed encirclement because that was when the perimeter could be described as a continuous consolidated line. But operationally, the decisive moment came earlier. On the 25th, 1st Panzer Army lost its ground connection to the rest of Army Group South. The ring had closed. Inside were approximately 200,000 men. Outside, the argument over whether they would be allowed to move had already begun. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein commanded Army Group South. For months, he had fought Hitler over the same issue. Manstein wanted elastic defense, withdraw before a formation was destroyed, trade ground for time, and counterattack from depth. Hitler demanded that ground be held, even when holding it meant sacrificing the army on it. As Hube's position collapsed, Manstein went to Hitler and demanded authority for a breakout. He tied the demand to his resignation. The order to stand fast was reversed. Hube could move. 6 days later, Manstein would lose his command. But for the moment, 1st Panzer Army had permission to live. The next decision belonged to Hube. Soviet commanders expected him to break south across the Dniester toward Romania. It was the shortest route to friendly territory. It was the obvious route, and because it was obvious, Soviet strength was weighted to block it. Hube chose the opposite direction. He turned west, away from the river, toward Bukak and Tarnopol, across more than 100 miles of Soviet-held territory. It was a dangerous choice, but it attacked the weakest part of the encirclement rather than the nearest exit. On March 27, the army began moving. The Germans called the method a wandering pocket. The encircled army did not dissolve into scattered columns racing for safety. It kept a moving perimeter. Combat groups formed a shield around the headquarters, wounded, remaining transport, artillery, and supply vehicles still able to move. Armored spearheads and engineers forced the road ahead. Infantry and heavy tanks held the rear against Soviet pressure. Flank guards protected the long columns from being cut apart. The whole pocket moved west like a damaged fortress dragged across the mud. It was competent staff work. It was also ruinously expensive. A moving pocket consumes fuel at every edge. The advance guard needs fuel to break through. The rear guard needs fuel to avoid being overtaken. Engineers need fuel to move bridging equipment. Ambulances need fuel to carry the wounded. Tractors need fuel to tow guns. And every detour around a crater, swamp, or Soviet blocking position increases the distance. 1st Panzer Army did not have the fuel. The airlift was supposed to deliver roughly 350 to 400 tons of supplies each day. Actual deliveries often fell between 40 and 100 tons. The shortfall was not minor, it was catastrophic. The Luftwaffe flew transports, many of them at night, into improvised landing grounds inside the pocket. Soviet air strength in the region heavily outnumbered the German aircraft available to protect them. When the landing strips became unusable, supplies had to be dropped. Some canisters landed outside the perimeter. Some disappeared into mud or darkness. Some arrived in the wrong place at the wrong time. More than 7,000 wounded men were flown out before the airfields failed. That saved lives. It did not restore mobility. A tank without fuel is not a tank. It is a steel position that must be abandoned the moment the front moves. A gun without a tractor is not mobile artillery. It is a weapon waiting to be captured. A truck buried to its axles is not transport. It is cargo that will never reach the next river. This was the hidden mechanism of the pocket. The Soviet ring did not have to destroy every German vehicle in combat. Mud, distance, and fuel scarcity forced the Germans to destroy many of them themselves. At each halt, crews drained what fuel they could. They removed radios, machine guns, sights, and documents. Then they placed charges in engines or fighting compartments and moved on foot. The army was escaping. Its steel was being left behind one field at a time. The route west crossed river after river, first the Zbruch, then the Seret, then the Stripa. Each crossing had to be forced in flood conditions against Soviet troops on the far bank. Approaches were churned into mud. Bridges had been damaged or were under fire. Engineering equipment was wearing out. Columns backed up for miles while Soviet artillery searched for them. The pocket advanced roughly 7 miles a day. For a mechanized army, that was not mobile warfare. It was an infantry march performed by formations still wearing Panzer insignia. The Soviets attacked the moving pocket continuously, but they rarely concentrated enough force at one point to split it. Their tank armies were exhausted. Their ring was stretched. Their command still believed for crucial days that Hube's real destination was south. By the time Soviet headquarters understood that the entire army was moving west, the strongest blocking forces were in the wrong place. Repositioning them through the same mud took longer than the German columns needed to reach the next crossing. That was the opening Hube exploited. But the opening did not make the journey easy. The rear guard fought to prevent Soviet infantry and armor from entering the long body of the column. The advance guard had to attack every roadblock quickly before congestion turned movement into paralysis. The wounded were carried in whatever vehicles still ran. Horses dropped in harness. Trucks were pushed off roads when they failed because leaving them in place could stop thousands of men behind them. Some crews walked away from vehicles they had maintained for years. Others stayed long enough to burn them. Night movement reduced air attack, but it increased confusion. Units lost contact. Supply drops were missed. Columns entered the wrong villages and had to reverse on roads where turning a vehicle was almost impossible. This was not a clean breakout. It was an army keeping just enough shape to avoid becoming a rout. And all the while, the material account was getting worse. German relief forces approached from the northwest. The 2nd SS Panzer Corps, including the 10th SS Panzer Division Frundsberg and the 6th Panzer Division, attacked eastward toward the trapped army. On April 6, German columns made contact near Bukak. The encirclement was over. Counted from the operational closure near Khotan on March 25, 1st Panzer Army had spent 12 days inside the ring, not 18. 12. Most of the men survived. That fact matters. German casualty returns for the encirclement and breakout list approximately 14,000 casualties from a force of about 200,000. Different accounts use different counting periods, and some add losses not contained in that return. But every serious version points to the same conclusion. The great majority of Hube's soldiers got out. The breakout was a genuine operational achievement. Now comes the other half of the ledger. German loss reports covering the wider encirclement period listed 322 tanks destroyed or abandoned. That figure did not include every armored type and did not fully capture the heavy tanks lost. The Soviet claim was higher, but not wildly higher. German records listed 39 assault guns lost. The army also lost most of its artillery, tens of thousands of motor vehicles and motorcycles, and thousands of horses. One German figure counted 21,959 motor vehicles gone. Another listed 6,675 horses lost. These numbers are not decorative. They describe the physical body of a modern army being peeled away. Fuel trucks, prime movers, repair vehicles, ambulances, staff cars, radio trucks, half-tracks, motorcycles, horse teams, artillery, assault guns, tanks. A panzer army was not simply a large group of men. It was a system built around movement, communication, firepower, maintenance, and supply. That system entered the pocket with more than 400 armored vehicles. It emerged with 45 tanks and assault guns combined. 45. The armored strength of a weak battalion came out under the name of an army. The men had escaped. The system that made them operationally dangerous had not. That is why calling Kamenets-Podolsky either a German victory or a Soviet failure misses the battle. The Germans avoided the destruction of 200,000 trained soldiers. The Soviets failed to seal the western face strongly enough to prevent that escape. Both statements are true, but those soldiers reached friendly lines without the equipment that had made 1st Panzer Army one of Germany's premier mobile formations. The army required a major refit before it could again conduct large offensive operations. And while that refit was being attempted, the strategic map kept moving west. The Red Army had crossed western Ukraine. It had reached the Prut. It had opened a broad gap between Army Group South and Army Group A. It had carried the front toward the Carpathian foothills and exposed the approaches to Romania. The Germans re-established a line, but far behind the positions they held when the offensive began. The territory was gone. The vehicles were gone. The operational initiative was gone. There is another battle on the same map that shows what the alternative looked like. Tarnopol had been declared a fortified place. Its garrison, roughly 4,600 men, was ordered to hold instead of breaking out. Only a few dozen escaped. Nearly the entire garrison was killed or captured. A relief attempt failed. The contrast was brutal. The formation allowed to move lost a small fraction of its manpower and nearly all of its heavy equipment. The formation ordered to stand lost almost everyone. Manstein understood that comparison immediately. It did not save him. On March 30, days after forcing authorization for Hube's breakout, Manstein was relieved of command. Hitler replaced him with Field Marshal Walter Model, a commander associated with holding defensive positions under extreme pressure. The message was unmistakable. The doctrine Manstein had defeated for one battle was restored as policy. Hube's own story ended only weeks later. He was promoted and decorated on April 20. The following day, he died after an aircraft crash while returning from Hitler's headquarters. The commander who had brought most of his army out of the pocket survived the encirclement by less than a month. But commanders were not the final measure of the operation. Ground was, mobility was, combat power was. The Soviet offensive liberated roughly 16,000 square miles of territory and fractured the German southern front. Its cost was heavy. Soviet irrecoverable losses across the broader offensive ran into the tens of thousands. Those were not losses from the pocket alone, and treating them as such distorts the scale of the campaign. The operation was a 5-week offensive across a vast front, not a single circular battle around one German army. That larger scale explains the imperfect encirclement. Soviet commanders were trying to do several things at once: close a pocket, cross major rivers, take western Ukraine, reach the pre-war frontier, separate German army groups, threaten Romania. Their armored formations were worn down. Their supply lines were stretched, and their strongest units were still being driven toward objectives beyond Hube's perimeter. They created a ring thin enough for men to break through, but they also created conditions in which those men could not bring their army with them. The argument over Kamenets-Podolsky usually begins with the wrong question. Was it a second Stalingrad? No. Was it a German triumph because most of 1st Panzer Army escaped? Also no. The real question is what it means for an army to survive. If survival means that most of its soldiers remain alive, Hube succeeded. If survival means that the formation retains the machines, fuel, artillery, transport, communications, and ground needed to fight as it fought before, then 1st Panzer Army did not survive intact. It crossed the finish line as manpower. The Red Army kept its armor, its transport, its guns, and the territory those weapons had defended. The battle did not end with 200,000 prisoners marching east. It ended with exhausted German soldiers marching west past the wreckage of the force they had once belonged to. The men escaped the ring. The Panzer Army did not.